The Covenant. So this is a movie that I know about because I've mentioned this before many times. I work at a movie theater, right? And I've seen I heard about this movie, kind of saw some images and some trailers about this movie, and then randomly I was walking past the standee at work and I saw Guy Ritchie's name. I'm like, that's a Guy Ritchie film? And I immediately lost all interest in this movie because Guy Ritchie is a guy, I've seen a few of his movies. I don't like any of the films I've seen other than Snatch. And I guess the Sherlock Holmes movies, which I don't really love. I think they're very much Guy Ritchie films and not so much Sherlock Holmes movies, and his style kind of takes over those movies a little bit too much. Anyways, I don't like a lot of his films, but his worst films are his films that don't look anything like his movies or feel anything like his movies. Like, you can't tell that Guy Ritchie directed that new Aladdin remake. It does not feel like a Guy Ritchie movie. There's a few of his movies like that. Also, his last film came out earlier this year, Operation Fortune, and was kind of boring. And I didn't really care for it too much. I gave it a decent review, but honestly, it was just not very good or very memorable, and it just kind of came and went. So, seeing this movie did not really give me any high interest or expectations. But I was doing like a 3 movie marathon. I thought I'd throw an extra movie in there, sat down in the theater, and I really liked this movie. First of all, what I think is great about this movie is Guy Ritchie likes to play around with structure with movies. So this movie's kind of split into 2 different parts, 2 different rescues, and that's really cool. And and it's because like movies like this, like movies about soldiers or wars or whatever, they're very generic. A lot of them, because like us Americans like have this thing about making like patriotic movies, which, don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with that, but it just like they all kind of blend together at a certain point. There's some really good ones that stand out, and then you just get ones that are just kind of like, all right, that kind of came and went. Um, like Devotion, other things like that. Just they're kind of different movies, but they still kind of like, I don't know. So Guy Ritchie brings a lot of Guy Ritchie isms to this movie. So in a way, this movie feels like a Guy Ritchie movie, but also doesn't. It's able to be something entirely different from most of Guy Ritchie's work. So you would have a hard time knowing that this is a Guy Ritchie's movie, but you also wouldn't not recognize that too. It's kind of weird. It also shows his versatility as a director to be able to like bring this movie that's so different from anything else in his career, and not in a sense where he was wrongfully attached to a project, right? Like M. Night Shyamalan directing Avatar: The Last Airbender. No, this is a guy who clearly wanted to make this movie, or maybe he was signed on by the studio, whatever the case may be, but clearly did bring his own style and flair to it and make it work. And that's some of the best directors can do that. Like Kubrick was not a normal studio guy, but his studio film, The Spartacus, the one studio film he made, is a great movie. And it was able to show his versatility as a director, even though that movie isn't great compared to the rest of his work or catalog. This movie I do think is really solid. Jake Gyllenhaal is really good, and it's about like what we will do to protect people, understanding situations, and it's a really tense thriller that's really well put together, acted and constructed, and just wonderfully directed by Guy Ritchie. And I think this movie was awesome. And I think that it's kind of flying under the radar, unfortunately, because we have so many movies out right now. We had Beau is Afraid just came out. We had Mario still making money at the box office. We got Evil Dead. We got a lot of things. Also, the way this movie was marketed made it seem a little generic, but also like I don't know how you market this movie without making it seem a little bit generic. But it was a good time, and I really appreciated this movie, and I was able to be something unique that I did not expect. And yeah, I just really enjoyed this movie, surprisingly. And I think that if you have a chance to go watch it, you definitely should, because it was awesome.